we went on the Paul Feinbaum show, I believe it was Monday, and sat down with him, talked through a lot of great things across the SEC, and he asked me, hey, who's a team in the middle of the pack in the SEC that you think is maybe set to make a jump? And I said Auburn, for reasons I'm about to mention here in just a moment, but we put that clip on social media. A lot of pushback. And a lot of the pushback came from the game against New Mexico State and what the offense didn't do, and Payton Thorne and how he wasn't successful last year. And I think we got to talk about that together, because everything that you believe about Auburn in 2024 more than likely is going to be tied to what you think Payton Thorne is going to be in 2024. And so that's a fair thing to talk about, but I think we got to zoom out a little bit and say, what's the offense going to be in 2024? There's a lot of different ways to say this. People are saying, well, it's, Hugh Freeze isn't calling the plays because Coach Nix is calling the plays. Listen, whoever's calling the plays is another discussion. I'm of the opinion that it's going to be a Hugh Freeze show to begin with. So what's Auburn going to do offensively in 2024, and why is it going to work? We'll talk about that. Auburn's going to run the football. You think about Hugh Freeze, you think about quarterbacks, think about scoring points. That's all true. I think there's a lot of validity in that, but their goal is to run the football. That's number one. Last year, Auburn ran the football really effectively. 186 yards a game, top 25 in the country. 4.8 yards a carry, top 30 in the country. So those pieces, I believe, are very much so still there, starting with Jarquez Hunter. If the offense is the meal that we're putting together here, it doesn't start without the butter within that dish. It doesn't start without the key ingredient. Key ingredient, running the football. Okay, that's getting us to a starting point. Now, everyone talks about Hugh Freeze and his system. It is a run-pass option system. So if I'm Payton Thorne playing quarterback, on a pretty high percentage of our plays, I have the option to hand it, or if I get the look that I want, I can pull it and throw it out to one of our playmakers. Last season, I don't think, that it's fair to judge this upcoming season by last season because of what I just mentioned. It's a Hugh Freeze kind of show. And when you saw Hugh Freeze last season, just if we're going to go ahead and use that as the best sample size for us going forward, Hugh Freeze last season, when he got control of the offense, there's a very different look to it, a very different tempo to it, a very different feel to it. The games that, from what I understand, he had the most influence on were the Georgia game, the Alabama game. What did we say? They're going to try and run the football. Georgia and Alabama, Auburn played to a one-score loss. Now, you don't get credit for losing close, but I think it's fair for us to use it as a data point. In both those games, they ran for over 200 yards, and their quarterback threw for less than 100 yards. Now, throwing for less than 100 yards is not an impressive feat, but I do think it's worth noting they played those teams so close, two of the best rosters in college football, two of the best head coaches in college football, and Kirby Smart and Nick Saban respectively, play them that close with no changeup pitch. Like, Hugh Freeze is dialing it up, playing in, play out, messing with the second level of the defense. You got the read option with Payton Thorne. You got zone, like all those things, inside zone, outside zone, all those things are happening, but you can't throw the football and you still played them to a one-score loss. What does that mean for the future? What does that mean when they do develop a little bit of something downfield, throw the football? I think it's worth just assuming a little bit there may be some steps made offensively in that department with Hugh Freeze now getting the entire offseason, entire spring ball, entire fall camp to build on those games and build on what he's done since installing that offense at Auburn and what they're going to be in 2024. Now, the real talking point for a lot of folks, as we mentioned at the top of this segment, it's going to start and end with Payton Thorne. And I understand that, man. I understand that. I'm not pushing back on that. He's the quarterback, right? Like, you got to have some juice to you. You got to have a little bit of it factor to you. If we want to have success offensively at the quarterback position, it starts with you. So the reason for optimism for me with Payton Thorne, yes, the Hugh Freeze thing is extremely important. It's a more comfortable offense, I believe, for him going forward. And we mentioned it being an RPO-centric offense. People throw shade at Payton Thorne, and the RPO system, he was pretty good. Like, if you follow StatCat, who does the Lord's work for us here at On 3, he went and tracked Payton Thorne's RPO passing numbers. He was 70% completion percentage, 7 yards an attempt on the RPO game. So you're telling me that RPO game is going to get more dangerous with Hugh Freeze and us running for in the neighborhood of 200 yards a game? That's going to open up some passing lanes. That's going to make his job a little bit easier. Again, in a scheme and a system that he's already proven in a small sample size he can be successful in with a better play caller to call a spade with Hugh Freeze. I think that's extremely fair to say. And then you look at the other part of this, Hugh Freeze has to be mentioned. He's going to have a voice in Payton Thorne's ear during the game. I'm not talking about like the Obi-Wan Kenobi use the Force Luke kind of vibe. I'm talking about like you now have a radio in your helmet if you're the quarterback that doesn't shut off until 15 seconds left on the play clock. So, I mean, Andy Staples talked about on his show yesterday when Hugh Freeze was at Liberty and Malik Willis was his quarterback. When they didn't have a radio, Hugh Freeze would give him a little signal like, hey, throw to this dude. Like he is just drawing it up, telling him very blatantly, put the football to this person. He can now do that with a walkie-talkie in my guy's ear. Like, come on now. It's fair to have a little bit of an expectation that maybe, just maybe, Payton Thorne could be better this upcoming season than last season. And now we also have to address the weapons. Like we mentioned, Hugh Freeze, mentioned the scheme. They're going to be run pass, run first, run pass option as a whole to, run to throw the football is kind of the sentiment we want to get at there. Better play caller, all those things. The weapons they have this year compared to last year, I think it's night and day. And Cam Coleman, he's only a freshman, but he's only a freshman in terms of what it says on the bio. In terms of physical giftings, dude has proven behind closed doors from talking to people during spring practice and then in front of closed doors, I guess open doors. He's proved during the spring game that he is an absolute stud. He's ready to go right now. Getting up to speed in the offense is going to be a factor. We'll see how that progresses. At the end of the day, though, you have a dude to throw the football to in Cam Coleman. That's obvious. What I love that Auburn did, though, they went and got Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State. What does he bring to the table? Stick a dynamite kind of player, baby. Keandre Lambert-Smith averaged right around 13 yards of reception last year at Penn State. Auburn last season was right around 6 yards in attempt passing the football last year. So I'm just saying now, you add a little bit more hot sauce into that offense, things could be headed in a better direction, being able to have Keandre Lambert-Smith on one side, Cam Coleman on the other side, and then Rivaldo Fairweather, who was the leading receiver last year for Auburn as a tight end. He's still there. We saw him during spring practice. Dude looks like he could be Mr. Olympia. He's put together. Like having all three of those cats at different levels of the field, defenses are going to have to make scholarship decisions. Going to have to make NIL decisions with how they want to try and defend all three of those cats. So Payton Thorne, the pressure is still on you to deliver, but I think the scheme in itself, giving him more RPO kind of plays, having a great stable of backs to hand it to, and having a great play caller in Hugh Freeze, and now more weapons, like a lot of these things are teed up now for Payton Thorne, I think, to have a lot more success this upcoming season than he did last year. We've talked about this a lot on this show, but I'll say it one more time. I don't think you can quantify how much experience matters for a guy like Payton Thorne and how much being comfortable at a place and in a system matters. Last year, y'all, he missed spring ball. It's one of our transfer portal rules on this show, and Payton Thorne is a big reason why we have that rule. You don't take your starting quarterback when you've missed all of spring practice. Why? Because those 15 practices are the most important part of your season to get everyone on the same page schematically. It's very difficult to pick it up during fall camp, very difficult to win a team in fall camp. So Payton Thorne, and we talked to Hugh Freeze about this, he wasn't comfortable for the duration of last season, is my opinion. Hugh Freeze is like, yeah, he missed spring ball. It showed. It is what it is. So the New Mexico State game, it's going to get a lot of play on social media, and we understand that. It is what it is. They should not have lost to New Mexico State. But I think to have that define them is as irresponsible than to allow Georgia and Alabama to have those two games define them. To me, those are all data points. New Mexico State, low data point. Playing Georgia to the final drive, playing Alabama to the final play, two pretty positive data points. So what do we do with data? We read it, and we make our own inference from it. To me, I think there's a lot of pieces there for Auburn. I think the new play calling with Hugh Freeze will be drastically improved from a season ago, and I think Payton Thorne is set up at the very least for a lot more success than what he had a season ago. So for Auburn, we'll see what happens, but we stand by what we said. We think Auburn is set to make a massive jump in 2024. How massive? 8-9 wins would not surprise me in the slightest. And I think we talk about Hugh Freeze in a very different way this time next year, if that ends up being the case. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.